Hey folks, it's Nick. Today we're going to do a little bit different video. I'm up potting these tomatoes for Carl Binger at Paris Natural Farms, and this all stems from a question that we got on one of our up potting videos on the regular Bootstrap Farmer channel. If you're not subscribed, please do, and while you're there, subscribe here. That actually helps us quite a bit. But we wanted to take a look at basically, we had a question. I'm selling my transplants for $4, but I don't want to give away my expensive pots. Do you have any tips? And we kind of worked through some things as to where you're getting your pricing from and what you're actually trying to compete against. And the moral of the story was you're only competing against yourself and your ability to talk to your clients and to perform in a way in which makes sense for your farm and for your clients. And we're not competing against other farmers, and we're not competing against big box stores. But I have a deep knowledge of how these big box stores operate. I did work for both of them about 20 years ago for several years. And so I wanted to give you an idea of if you are viewing those as competition as to what you're against. So number one, these big box places, now that's the orange one, the blue one, or the other blue one with a happy face, they are not spending money on inventory, meaning they're not out of pocket on any plant that you see whenever you go into a garden season this time of year. Moreover, they're selling space, and the vendors that you can go in and see, especially this time of year, especially on the weekends, they're in a different colored shirt. They're not in that branded store. Those people work for the suppliers, meaning they're going in there, they're working their own inventory, they're culling their own bad plants, they're in large taking care of their plants and making sure they're watered and upkept and all that kind of thing. They're also the ones that stock the shelves themselves. So the big box stores are not having to spend labor to maintain this selling situation other than the cashier. And they're also not spending all the money on inventory. Small farmers, you're having to spend that money. You're having to buy pots. You're having to buy seed. You're having to do this months in advance, which means you're out of pocket of money unless you've already sold it. So is there a way that you can pre-sell? Is there a way that you can buy in bulk? Maybe planning out a little bit longer and a little bit better might be part of that equation. The other thing to think about is if they're not out all this money, where do these relationships get formed? And they get formed long ago, months in advance, by people that negotiate on both sides for a living. So when we start talking about, I want to sell to my buying public, it's very transactional. Maybe they follow you, maybe they don't, but they're not going through and taking a look at every single penny and cost of buying hundreds of thousands of trays at one time, automating dirt fillers, automating vacuum seeders, putting those out in the most perfect of structures, strategically located all over the country with the correct logistics in place, with the correct racking in place, with a trained sales force that may or may not have a horticulture background to go work these stores in a very efficient manner. All of that has already taken place. The infrastructure at the stores, they already have the water, they already have shade cloth, they already have polycarbonate roofs. All of these things are in place in order to maximize profits at the exact right point of time, no matter where they are in the country. You can go right now and you can take a look at some of the prices that they're selling some of their 4-inch starts on. It's right on the internet, no matter where you're at in the country. And you can see that it's probably much higher than you would expect. And it's for sure a lot higher than the $4 example that I gave you at the beginning of this video. If this is our competition, who are we really competing against? And it's competing against the same thing I said a minute ago. We're competing against ourselves. We're competing against this mindset that you have to be cheaper, that it's okay to put things in cheap cups and have disposable wares, or you can level up. And of course, this helps us, right? Like we're in the business to sell pots, but we're also in the business to give you equipment that you can trust on and that is going to not make it into the landfill after a single use. So if we're voting for our dollar as farmers on better equipment, whether it's from us or from somebody else, you're also wanting your clients to vote with their dollar in supporting local. Again, they go out of their way to support us. If we make the choice in the investment to do better and to provide a better quality situation and to tell our stories and to be there after the fact, hey, maybe you got a DM, I got your tomato plant, it's looking a little wilty. These are all prices that you have to think about. Are you going to be available to these folks afterwards? Because some of that is already baked into the price at some of the big box stores as far as returns and cold, and do things live, do they not? They all have a warranty, and whether people use it or not, the pricing structure is still in place that they're not going to lose any money. Just a few quick notes to think about. Remember that these plant sellers are selling on consignment. They have a space, they have a certain amount of square footage that they could use, and whatever they sell, they make their commission on. So if they go through and decide that this little plant is not good enough and cull it, that's their cost, that's on them. As a farmer, you would not even take a small plant to the market, but you do have the variable cost of the seed and the dirt and then the time it took to cull out that single one out of this tray. So just make sure that you're baking in the possibility of some of these seeds not fully germinating. And if you need 72 plants, you might want to plant 128 and give yourself a little bit of buffer room to present the very best of the best. The next thing to think about is transportation. So if we are starting a bunch of transplants and we put it in a lot of like round, flimsy cups, you take it to the market, likely they're going to fall over unless you come up with some apparatus that you're going to have to spend time on. Versus with our stuff, they can be shipped without the fear of toppling over. And just imagine if we had a couple of tomato plants, a couple of pepper plants, a couple of cucumbers, and a couple of herbs, that this whole thing sold to a customer where they could take it home and not worry about it falling over. Plus, look at this presentation. Maybe you have a deposit on it. Maybe you get these pots back. Maybe you bake that into the price. All of these things show that person that you took the extra time and care. And as you voted for your dollar for better equipment to keep things out of the landfill, they're in turn doing the same. And sure, it's going to cost them a few extra dollars. But again, most farmers are drastically underpriced, which is why we want to have discussions like this. So we're not racing to the bottom as some of the other people have to do, like these big box stores, because we do not know if this is a loss leader or not. And that brings me to my next point. If you have a big box store and they're selling paint and hardware and electrical and tools and groceries and milk and clothes and shoes, some of these departments are working on less margin. I know that this time of year, that's not necessarily the case, but you'll often see plants at a 6-pack or a 4-inch at pretty much a super deep discount, and especially mulch and things like that. These are devices that those companies have gone, look, we'll even sell it under cost just to get people in the door, because they know that when they're there, they're going to buy batteries, they're going to buy paint to touch something up, they're going to buy dirt, they're going to buy fertilizer, they're going to buy tree stakes. All of these little sales that they get just because they came in for this sale, that's where your higher margin items are. So how can we equate that to the farmer's market? Well, maybe you take this little plant and maybe you're not selling it for everything that you could because of whatever reason or affliction you may have about selling this for the proper amount. But while they're there, you do have the opportunity to go, hey, do you want to add on a pepper plant? Do you want to add on my little mix of worm compostings? Or do you want to pick up something else while you're here? These are add-on values. And any farmer's market should have these little tiny, think of the candy bars and think of the chapstick at the end of the register. These are easy items that people just want to pick up and buy from you. If this is your loss leader, treat it as such. And if it's not, use other ways to employ that. Maybe you don't have to make all the margin, because that's what some of these stores do, and that's a tactic that you may want to adopt. The other thing to think about, and it's almost impossible to compete on, which is why I want to get away from this mindset that we're competing against really anybody else, is I want you to think about the sheer volume of infrastructure, at least in the software and the sales data management and the marketing budget that some of these big box stores. Hopefully you're using an email marketing campaign just like the big box stores do. Maybe you're using sales data from your credit card reader to go, hey, I know that this time last year we really sold a bunch of cucumbers and we didn't sell hardly any of X, Y, and Z. Use that sales data. And if you don't have this in place, go ahead and go to the big box stores and be a spy. Be somebody that goes and just looks at what's going on in these stores. Can you bring it back to what you're doing on your own operation and look at some of the very expensive lessons that they have paid for in setting up their booth, setting up the cash register, making sure their infrastructure is in place. How did they sell? How did they present? All of these things they pay big money for. Steal those ideas. It's perfectly fine. The other thing that's hard to compete against is the sheer volume of their ability to buy in bulk. So as a farmer, I know a lot of times people get upset at one of the seed suppliers because it costs a lot to ship their seeds. At this time of year, it's maybe a little bit too late, but as you're planning out your next season and as you're ordering your stuff, hopefully a couple of months before you actually need it so you can properly order and take your time, go ahead and invest in yourself. Meet those $200 thresholds to get that free shipping. You're buying in bulk, you're saving on shipping. That's money back in your pocket that you can reinvest to maybe get a couple of extra situations in which you can up pot and sell something that really costs you just a few cents and turn that into $4, $5, $6, $7, $8 on down the line. It may not be a huge part of your regular inventory, just like annual and perennial flower sales at these big box stores are not an everyday thing for them, but they're leveraging the seasonality of the situation and they're leveraging people's excitement of it's spring, I want to plant something. You can do the same and give yourself a little spike and a little bump to add to your regular bottom line. And that hopefully is leading you to do exactly what the big box stores and making an event of it. Hey, it's the first of the farmer's market. This is when we sell transplants. Hey, it's Easter or it's Thanksgiving or it's Christmas. This is when we sell our Christmas cactus or our succulents or our hanging baskets for Mother's Day or something like that. They have a calendar. I promise you they use it. Everybody has access to a calendar. You can forecast when Mother's Day is and prepare for it. So now I want to give you just a few tips on how you can separate yourself from any other competition, but especially big box stores that in our head sometimes we worry about. Number one, that's leveraging niche markets. So as a local farmer, are people more likely to ask you about what you should transplant, or are they going to go to one of these big box stores and ask somebody that you wouldn't trust to babysit your hamster? You know what I mean? I mean, it's just like you go to these places, if you can find anybody, they're not trained, they don't know, they want to ask a farmer. So this is what I grow. This is why I have planted this out for you. This has worked great for me. I know it's going to work in your garden. And they're getting that from a trusted source that somebody does this every day for a living. Use that. Nobody will have any problem spending $3, $4, $5 more per plant knowing that they can trust it. Number two, direct-to-consumer sales channels. I know a lot of us will do deliveries. Make sure that you're giving people the opportunity to add on some of these transplants in your regular deliveries or in your CSA share. To me, it's a great idea that if you're going to do a CSA share, that you're adding something so people can go ahead and plant their own herbs and cut and come again. May cost you a little bit in future sales, but it also is going to leave an impression on folks that you're like, hey, I know that I want you to have the very best. Herbs are fun. They're easy. If they don't work out, we'll still have some for you, but that's a great way to give your folks a little bonus in the beginning of the season. The next thing to do is to leverage that social media, leverage your email list, and leverage your conversations that you're having with people at the market or at your drop-offs or farm stand. And that, hey, we're local, we're a small family business. They see you with their own eyes. They see your family. They see your operation. That's something worth investing in. And go ahead and lean into it. I know a lot of us are a little shy and a little introverted, but this is what's going to sell you time and time again, is to continue to tell that story, tail back on your planning, tail back on, hey, we're now seeding for the first time. We're now putting these things on heat mats, explain the process. All of these things aggregate up to tell your story and to let your people know the care that you took to go from the seed to these transplants to now the up pots. And hopefully they'll be sharing that with their followers and pointing back to your farm for the next season. Next thing to think about is, just like the big box stores utilize their sales data, if you haven't gone into some of the capabilities of your credit cards back-end system on, hey, you're creating SKUs, you're creating categories, what sold best. By the time the summer ends, you're going to wish you had all that data. So you might as well figure out how to set up the system now, use all that information, collect all those emails. So the next time we have this conversation next year, you have hard numbers based off of hopefully 1, 2, 3 years worth of sales data that you can adjust your seed schedule, your planting schedule, what you're bringing to market. Hey, we only sold 10 kohlrabi the whole year. Yeah, maybe we should plant some more carrots. You're not going to know unless you learn those systems, just like the big box stores do. And so the last thing I'll leave you with, and I know this was a short episode, but we're all super price conscious. And I said it in the other video, but it's worth repeating because this is certainly not the first time I've said this, in that we can't put our assumptions on price and cost and how much things cost as farmers who we're trying to squeeze every nickel out of kind of a low volume, low margin business, potentially, that we're putting that back on our clients. So if you have somebody that, makes $400,000 or $500,000 a year, a couple $100,000 a year, and they're putting in the effort to come to the market and they're diligently trying to support you, giving them a perceived break and making less money and selling them at something that's far less in value than what it could be, you're not only hurting yourself, but you're also setting up this pattern of repetition in which whenever you do finally come to your senses and raise your price up to what it should be, they might get sticker shock. Instead of bringing it up to where it naturally should be and kind of covering inflation and covering cost, quit trying to get everybody a deal. Make sure that you're able to stay in business year over year. Nobody's going to bat an eye. If anybody has rose prices, I really suggest that after you get done subscribing to this channel, you give your fellow, quit listening to me. Listen to the fellow farmers, leave something in the comment. I rose prices and this happened. Tell them what happened. And I guarantee you that 9.5 times out of 10, nobody had a problem with it. Nobody batted an eye. And more often than not, I hear people thanking the farmer because for a long time, people felt bad that things were so cheap. So just know that that is what we're competing against. We're not competing against the orange place or the blue place or the other light blue place. We're competing against, are we doing the right thing for our business? Are we doing crossing all the I's, dotting all the T's? I always flip that backwards, but you guys know what I mean. Just make sure that we're not worried about what somebody else is doing. Manage your business and charge accordingly. Your clients will thank you. And we'll see you next week.